Ollinger, and welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom on the Spanglish World Network, channels on Zingo 250 and 251. Thank you so much for joining the show, and be sure to rate and leave a comment on the Zingo TV app, which is free. You can find it and download it on all Apple and Android devices, and also Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and moving forward. So welcome today. I'm so excited to welcome Sara Fritsch, and she is the founder of Moxie Space Organizing. So welcome, Sara.
Hi, Laura. Thank you. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So today, I love the idea of having you on because this is really a universal problem. It's really not just a mom problem, but we're going to put it in the context of moms today, which is being organized in your physical space, whether it's your home or your office, but specifically you focus on people's homes. So Sara, tell us what it's like when you enter someone's world. I know you work with all different types of clients. So give us maybe a few examples of like what you walk into, why people need you, and what you do to help them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like you said, it's all different types of spaces and clients and needs, but the thing that we all have in common, or they all have in common, is that they are kind of feeling maybe overwhelmed with the stuff in their home. They're feeling maybe overwhelmed with the fact that it feels like there's nowhere to put anything, or they don't know how to put things away because there's not enough space to put things away, because maybe there's not a home for everything they own. Um, Sometimes the houses are in such a state where, we can't see the counters, or we can't see any surface space because the clutter is spread all over the surfaces and on the floors. And then sometimes it's a situation where there's maybe a transition happening in the home where there's a new baby coming, or someone's graduating college, or the kids they've been sharing a room and now they're ready to split them up into two separate rooms. And so we do a lot of help with changing of the layout of the home, oh, this has been the guest room forever and we're trying to turn it into an office. That was something really popular over the pandemic and since then. So it can be, I do find a lot of times it's a transition happening that triggers the need for organizing. Maybe you're getting ready to move, or there's just something different happening in the family, or it can just be a simple, need for, I'm tired of dealing with this clutter. I'm tired of not having a system. We moved in 2 years ago or 4 years ago, and we never fully unpacked or set things up. And now it's like, we can't catch up. That's a comment that I hear a lot.
Yes. And so that is my personal experience. That's why I'm so passionate about having you talk to the moms. So several years ago, we were needing to sell our house. Except the problem is I was living in the house with my 4 kids, and there was just so much stuff going on. And like with the birth, that all the moms can identify all the presents that come with birthdays and holidays. And so it's like trying to get the house show ready was one kind of challenge, but like living in it day to day. But then I had y'all come in, you like cleaned up all the kids' spaces, all the toys, all the like so much. But then what was awesome about it is it made it so much easier than when it was time to move to get everything packed. But then here's the best part. When we got unpacked, then everything was already labeled. So I was in a temporary space for a little while, and then we're finally in our permanent home. And so it just like helped the entire process. Like I'm still finding things to these days that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what the Moxie Space people did for me. And it kept us, just kind of clean and organized. And whether you have 1 kid or 4 kids, there's always just the stuff. And then the systems that come with kids, whether it's like, where do the cleats go? Where do the sports stuff go? Where does arts and crafts go? Or things like that. So what about like, what is, so when people hire you, I love the idea of the process, that people come in, but I think there's probably the people like me who were like, well, how are they going to know what to do? Like, they don't know what my stuff is.
Yeah.
So what is it like to have that experience?
Yeah, that's a big question we get, when people think like, oh, you must need me to be home the whole time you're here, or involved, right? Because you don't know what my stuff is, and maybe you don't know where it should go or what to do with it. And so, yeah, that's a very common thing. And as it turns out, and I'm saying this because it was kind of a surprise to me too, as I got more into the business and into the industry, there's a lot we can do without the homeowner or client being present, or even being involved. I actually tell new clients who come to us now, I say, you can be involved as much or as little as you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. We like to know ahead of time what to expect so we can plan for it. But, really when it comes down to it, is every home may have a different layout, but honestly, we all have the same type of stuff. It doesn't matter how much of it there is or how nice the house is or whatever the case may be. Like we all wear clothes and we all have chargers for everything, and we're all just kind of dealing with the same challenges with our stuff. And especially when now I've been in business for almost 8 years and I have a whole team. And so we've organized hundreds and hundreds, we're like that 10,000 hours plus in at this point. And
Wow.
so I think that's helpful also, is like after getting to see every type of space there is out there and mostly every type of client, you kind of just learn, how people are using their stuff and what they're struggling with. And, but as far as what I like to always also, make sure that we're clear about is when it comes to editing or decluttering or whatever you want to call it, getting rid of stuff, we're very, very serious about not getting rid of anything without permission.
Mm.
And so that's how we like to know, how much does the client want to be involved? Are they going to drop in at 11:30 for 15 minutes, or are they going to be here all afternoon? So we can just prepare, so we can ask all those questions at once or set everything aside and leave a sticky note or something like that.
Mm.
But yeah, in general, we all get the same stuff. We're all going through the same challenges. When a client has preferences and they say, no, I want my, if we're doing an unpack or something and they say, well, I know I want my coffee station over here and I don't care about the rest. And so, we'll make sure we address that one request. And then otherwise, we're just trying to come up with the most efficient functional system that is intuitive for the user. That's our end goal.
Mm. I like how you said that we all have kind of the same stuff, because that kind of like humanizes us, and it also takes a little bit of the shame out, because I know
Yeah,
how embarrassed I was, so embarrassed to have y'all over and
sure.
see our mess. And I just have this
Yeah,
feeling, knowing my friends, that how like whenever
yeah.
you want to have a friend stop by, you're like, oh, my house is a mess, let me clean up. Or, we're all embarrassed about having messy
Mm-hmm.
space. So I can only imagine it would be really embarrassing for people to all come in who are like the organized people and like see their stuff. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of help your clients like get past that feeling of shame or embarrassment or humiliation, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it is such a huge part of, I think, asking for help in general, right? Whether it's for organizing your house or going to the dentist. I always use that as an analogy. Like when you go to the doctor, or you go to the dentist, you're like, oh, sorry about my mouth. It's like, well, that's why you're here. And it's kind of a similar thing. Or you could think of like a bookkeeper, maybe, right? Sometimes it could be hard to hire a bookkeeper and let somebody see all your financials, but it's like that's their job and that's what they do. And they're really not judging it. It's like a math problem, quite literally, for a bookkeeper. But I also like to say that for organizers, we're walking into maybe chaos or a mess or whatever it is, a disorganized space, and it's a puzzle for us to solve. We're not here to judge. I always try to remind everyone that we have it a lot in our language, in our consultation forums and things like that, just as a reminder, like, hey, we're really not here to judge. We're
Mm.
here because we love what we do. We love helping. We love making order. And we truly do see this as, a lot of times, it's like a puzzle. Most organizers are natural puzzlers. We love doing puzzles. We love putting things in place. It just gives us a lot of satisfaction. And so, yeah, it's so beyond that, the judging of a space or something. I mean, it's our job. And so, it's a challenge that we get to solve. And I even have some organizers who will say, hey, give me the messiest spaces. Like, the more mess, the better. I
Mhm.
love a good challenge, is really kind of what it comes down to for us. I mean, we're not like, we are humanizing the experience, and we know
Yeah.
that, it's a very personal and intimate experience. But when it comes to something nuts or something crazy, we don't want people to feel embarrassed or shame, because it's not what we're here for. And, we just like putting things in order.
Yeah, I like that. And if they are having any still kind of apprehension or sense of judgment, you can almost flip the mindset to what you just said, which is you're kind of giving the organizers a big present. Like, here you go. Here's my
Yeah.
message. face because they get the satisfaction of that
Yeah.
before and after. So it's almost like getting to see their best talents come to life, to see like how much they've been able to make that transformation. So
Yeah.
if we're going to worry about anything, maybe that's just like the way we think of it, is like, you know what, here you go. Here's a big project for you.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we love what we do. And so we're very grateful to be able to do this and get paid for it. It's a really cool thing. I think most organizers feel that way about having a job as an organizer. We feel lucky to get to do the work.
Yeah, that's really neat. And I
Mhm.
relate as well, because a lot of clients who come to me with problems about their teenager or problems with the relationship with they're having with their teenager,
Mhm.
and you can tell they're a little bit reluctant to share. Not all the time. Sometimes they just spill it, but sometimes they're reluctant to
Yeah.
share because they feel like they're the only one, or they're embarrassed. And I'm like, look, when you see this, kind of like what you said, when you've done this for a long time, you start to see that this is just normal
Yeah.
human behavior, and there's patterns, and that we all experience these certain things. And so, yes, to do my job, I have to have no judgment. I'm just here to help. And it's the same type of thing where I just want to get what the client wants. And so that's when I
Right.
know I'm doing my best work, is when I can accomplish their goal for them. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah. Well said. Hmm.
Okay. Good, good, good. Okay. So for moms, I kind of feel like there's ways where we can like break it up into like ages and stages. And so you
Mm.
probably, I know you have talked to me about seeing like there was such a gamut of like the moms with the babies and the toddlers, and then like
Hmm.
the kind of middle age kids where it's still some toys, but like starting to gravitate into the video games. Then we get into the
Hmm.
teenagers, and then we get into the empty nesters. So can you give
Right.
any like, examples of like what might be different or what might be the same as moms go through all those ages and stages?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, the obvious is just how in the beginning, right? How quickly your kiddos are growing. I mean, those babies, they wear the outfit like two times, and then it's time to get rid of it because they don't fit in it anymore. And
Uh-huh.
then not only that, you're not only your children are growing so fast, but if you're having children, then your clothing is also changing, and your body size is changing, and your needs
Mhm,
are changing.
mhm,
I mean, it's so prevalent when the babies are little, when those newborns come, and so much changes, of course. But
mhm,
it's like it's what their needs are, what the baby's needs are, and their clothing and their changes, and then you've got your clothing that's changing, and your needs are changing, but it's also changing what you own and what you have in your kitchen. Let's say, right, if you're doing
absolutely.
bottles, and then eventually they start eating solid food, and you've got bibs everywhere, um, and then, of course, let's not never forget the enormous toys that children get when they're really young, right? The walkers and the play mats and all those things that just take up so much space. And so I feel like, and I'm not a mother, but of course, we organize for moms all the time. And I have lots of nieces and a nephew. And so what I see, of course, is when they're youngest, it seems like that's like when the most change is happening rapidly. It feels
Mhm,
rapid.
mhm,
Um, and then, of course, as they're getting bigger, they're changing, their interests are changing, the books that they're reading are changing, their clothes are changing. I mean, it's a constant movement. And my best piece of advice for it is, is to get yourself in the habit of letting things go, and just it's almost just like a go ahead and adopt the mindset that there's gonna be constant shifting and shuffling with the stuff in your house when you
mhm,
have children, because your
mhm,
children are constantly changing and their needs are constantly changing. And we're not I think we're pretty good as a whole, as a human society, to of bringing stuff in. We're pretty
mhm.
good at that. I think
Yeah.
what we struggle with is letting things go out. And maybe it's not even because we have a hard time letting things go, but I think it's also just because, you know, we're I feel like, we're at a time in life where the generations that are alive right now are kind of struggling with something that hasn't been a thing for very long, which is having too much stuff, right?
Mhm.
Like back when 100 years ago, that was not a thing.
Right,
Nobody
right.
had too much stuff. In fact, most people lacked for what they even needed or wanted,
Right.
right? And so I think that our generations were never taught about the necessity of moving things out, because stuff is always
Mhm.
moving in. But if we're not in the habit of moving things out, that's when we get to a point where we're like, I have too much stuff. And then if you're not moving houses, if you're literally not selling and moving your house very regularly, which is a great time to declutter, and that's when most people will maybe declutter if they do. But if you're not moving, you stay in the same house for even 5 years these days, that's a long time, and you can accumulate a lot of stuff. And so if you don't have that regular maintenance of letting things go, or culling through and getting rid of all the clothing that doesn't work, or those baby bottles that you don't need. And of course then there's that whole other thing of, well, if I have another child, should I hold
Right.
on to this, and where should I put it? And right, so then there's that whole piece of it. And when we if we were to come in, or when we do come in and help mothers and families with this challenge and this issue, is we try to set up simple, always simple systems that they can grow into, whether that be, several tubs, containers with lids that have, the ages on them for clothing or toys,
Mhm.
and cycle through those, right? But it's always a process of, well, now they're ready for this size, but that means this size is too small. So are we gonna get rid of it? Are we gonna store it for the next baby? I often, and sorry, maybe I'm going too far into my
I like
answer
it.
here. I hope I'm still on topic. Okay, good. Good. Yeah. Well, I also like to try and just however we can help ourselves easily is the way to go. And when you could do something where you have a container and it has a lid, and that's your boundary basically, where it's like, I can
Mm.
keep this much for my next kid if I'm going to have another kid, or this much maternity clothing or whatever it is, and I'm only going to keep the best, and anything else that doesn't fit has to go.
Yeah.
And and it's a trigger, meaning that it triggers the next habit. So like when that thing is full, that means that you can't put anything on. That's your trigger to start letting things go out the door instead of
Yeah.
continuing to build in, right? Like laying stuff on the top of the bin. No, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. You got to get in the habit of pushing it out, donating or whatever.
Yes, I love that. And in my world, we call it if this, then that. So if this is full, then that needs to go. Right. It's that
Yeah.
habit stacking, or
Yes.
linking of those habits. The one thing that really stood out to me in what you were saying earlier was we tend, a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us tend to want to hold on to things for that emotional, sentimental
Mhm.
reason. And especially with the kids, when they're growing, we want to hold on to their younger years, and it's hard for us as moms to like see them grow up, because we're so sentimental about when they were little, and when they were sweet, and when they
Mhm.
smelled good, and all that stuff. And when they would wear the clothes we wanted them to wear, we could choose it, and it was cute, and we made the hair matching, and it was fun, right? You can tell I'm talking
Yeah.
about, but I know a lot of people can identify.
Yeah.
And so how what do you do when you have a client who is really struggling with like letting anything go? Like, is there something
Mhm.
that you all
Mhm.
say to like help coach them through that?
Yeah, I think we have a blog actually that I think it's called like 5 questions to ask yourself when decluttering.
Mm.
And it's something along the lines of, there's the basic questions of which this isn't necessarily going to apply to what you're saying. You're talking about sentimental stuff. That's a whole other thing, right? It's not like, well, when's the last time you used this? If you haven't used it in a year, let it go, which I don't subscribe to any like hard and fast rule like that. I even think like within my own closet, yeah, there are things I haven't worn in a whole year, but that doesn't mean that I won't wear them again a year or two from now. Sometimes seasonality shifts, or my personality shifts, or whatever. So I'm not always into a hard and fast rule, but I will say that when it comes to sentimental items, I think understanding first and foremost that sentimental items do pull on our emotions. And so it is very different, probably very different than, say, culling out expired food in your pantry. Right. And I'm just hesitating because there is no real rule, right? But what I would suggest is there's a couple ways, maybe the limiting yourself with how much you're going to keep, right? You allow yourself to keep a certain number of small baby clothes or whatever, or the toys or whatever it is, and you have a small box and you pack it away. And anything else that doesn't fit in there is probably too much. You get to decide how big that container is, right?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Right. And another thing that I know some people do is they take photos of the thing before they let it go. So they at least have some piece of it or
Okay.
some memory of it.
Mhm.
There's another interesting kind of train of thought with all of this when you're keeping sentimental items. It's like, who, I think the good question is like, who are you keeping it for? Are you
Yes.
keeping it for yourself, or, and probably you are, but maybe you're telling yourself that you're keeping it for your kid.
Yeah.
Um, right. And I don't think either one is right or wrong. I'm not going into that, but I'm just saying, just, as long as you're feeling clear and you're being honest with yourself, and maybe you're keeping it for yourself and you think that your child will want it one day, that's fine and fair.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that sometimes I think we all have a story where our maybe a parent or a grandparent or whoever raised us, like drops off a box of stuff that was ours
Yeah.
when we were kids. And we're
Yeah.
like, thanks, mom. I don't really want this. And you're just dumping it on me because you don't know what to do with it.
Right.
Right. And if you've had that experience, just remember that so that you
Mhm.
don't do it to your kids.
Mhm.
Um, Okay, so letting go of sentimental stuff, or trying to figure out how to let it go of sentimental stuff. I will say this too. I find often that a lot of times what we're really wanting is we're wanting that memory to stay alive. And we're
Yeah.
afraid if we let go of the thing, the memory will be gone forever. And so
Yes.
what can be very helpful sometimes is that if you're working with someone else, whether that be a very close friend or your partner or an organizer, right? If someone's there with you, that can help a lot, because you're getting sometimes, because I've done this for myself. I had my best friend come over a couple years ago. I need help going through my closet, and I need it to be a friend. I don't want it to be one of my employees this time. I just want a girlfriend. And I went through my whole closet and I told a story about every single piece of clothing I had. And
Oh,
as I
really?
was doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like one of my clients right now, where, but what's happening is I want my memories to live on, and I want to be witnessed, and I want to be seen for what I'm going through and for the
Mhm.
things that I've done. And so
Mhm.
that is a piece of it. And so if you find someone that you love and trust and can just kind of hold that space with you while you try and declutter, that could be very supportive and helpful,
Mhm.
because someone's
Mhm.
getting to you're not doing it on your own. It doesn't feel like you're letting it go and no one's ever going to know about it. I think that could be supportive.
Mhm.
The last thing I'll say, that I hear some people do is when they're considering letting something go, they box it up and then put it like in the garage or something, or they
Mhm.
put it somewhere else that's out of sight, and they maybe set a calendar reminder for maybe say 6 months from now. And if 6 months from now you go back to that box and you realize you don't have as much attachment as you thought you did, or you never missed the thing that you thought for sure you were going to miss, then that's an interesting indicator of maybe you are ready to let it go. But
Yeah.
you're kind of giving yourself the baby steps to test it out.
Right, right. Those are all great pieces of advice. And my favorite one is, I have a feeling some people might be afraid to have an organizer come in their house because they're afraid that the organizer would say, this has to go, this has to go, this has to go. But what you said was, you
Hmm.
decide.
Hmm.
Right? And so if the client
Yeah.
has the decision-making power and the veto power to say, no, don't get rid of it, then
Hmm.
you're to know that, like, okay, there are some things or there aren't some things. But I also liked your advice earlier about, okay, you get one box per child or per whatever,
Yeah.
and once it's full, then that's good. That's enough stuff to hold on to, so that you
Yeah.
can, relive their baby days if you really want to, which
Hmm.
most of the time, when it
Yeah.
really ever happened, like
You don't have time. Right.
we don't, we don't really think of that. We think we are going to do that, but then we're not. Because, like, right now, my kids are, teens and tweens, and we're just living life, right? We're
Hmm.
not ready
Yeah.
for things. We're in the present moment, and if anything, we're
Yeah.
only looking forward to the future, right? Because we're
Right.
about to make a lot of changes in our family, and
Yeah.
so we're not looking back a lot of times. And I think people think they will, but then they don't. And so, yeah, like, you're dealing with all those different emotions totally with
Yeah.
your spouses. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really is. It can be such an intimate job, and in the best way. I mean, honestly, if it may sound kind of cliche or cheesy, but it's like it's an honor that we have clients that will invite us into their home and go through this process with them, and it's not always like, an emotional process, and sometimes it's not even really about decluttering very much. It's about rearranging what's already there.
Mm.
But I would love to kind of just like emphasize the importance of it is the client's decision what to keep and what to let go of. And we're there to help guide you, and we're there to help you feel clear about what you're keeping and what you're letting go of, because we have no agenda as to how much we think you should let go of. We're never walking into a home thinking like, I'm going to have this person get rid of half of their stuff because they
Yeah,
have too
yeah.
much, or, there's no goal to it. In
Mhm,
fact, I will go as far as to say, like, I don't care what you decide you want to keep or let go of. It
mhm,
doesn't matter to me. What I care about is that I know that you feel good about the decisions that you're making, that I
mhm,
can tell that you're clear and you're ready to let go of these
mhm,
things. And I'm happy to help guide you and ask you different questions to help you get to the bottom of it. Um, there's so much to be said for having somebody in the room who cares, but is also unbiased and unattached. And so they can stay, like an organizer, they can stay focused,
mhm.
but they have that, they have empathy and they care, but with no specific agenda other than just helping you get to your goal, whatever that is for you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's very reassuring. I think,
Good.
to
Yeah.
have it be that the client is that in that control seat.
Hmm.
So I would love to transition a little bit more into like practical tips and tools. So imagine that you have, a client who, has got lots of kids and they've got a very busy life and they
Yeah.
are just always on the go. And the problem is they imagine if they would hire an organizer that the house would then be messy again in a week. Right.
Right.
And so like what I'm
Right.
really wanting to like share with the audience is, how do you come into a home, get it all clean and organized, but then help the client learn how to maintain it
Right.
and not help the client as the parent, but help the parent then teach the kids, these are the new systems, this is how we want to do it. So what do you offer when
Hmm.
situation?
Yeah. Well, so first and foremost, if our goal is that we are setting up extremely simple systems, and I
Okay.
use the word system, but that just means like, where does the mail go when it comes through the front door? The incoming mail. What's the system for that? Does it get tossed onto the kitchen island for a week, and then maybe it gets dealt with, maybe it never does, and maybe it gets lost or whatever. Like that's a system. I mean, it's not functioning, but so a system just means like, what's the process, And so our goal is always, always to set up the most simple system possible. And in fact, we really feel like if you have to go through more than like two steps to access something in your home, that's too many steps. So you can think of like, let's talk about toys. Putting toys away. If you set up a system, and especially for younger children, right, it's going to be even more, maybe more challenging. Is say that their toys are put away inside a bin that has a lid on it, and that bin goes inside a cabinet, and that cabinet has a door on the front of it, right? So you've got to open the door and then pull out the bin and then take off the lid. It's like that's three steps, right? That's a lot to put away toys. That's not a system that is likely going to stay, or that anybody's going to use. What's going to start happening is they're going to open the cabinet door, maybe, hopefully, and maybe just shove it, maybe just throw it in the thing. They're not. So the best, if you had to keep the cabinet door, then the best thing would be to have a bin with no lid, right? So
Mm,
they can just, but they still have to open the door, pull the lid out. Um, Maybe best thing is to lose the cabinet door altogether, maybe,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But sometimes you want stuff to be put away. So there's a balance, right? There certainly is a balance with organizing, of like finding something that is functional and works, but also looks nice. And I don't think that we should throw out one thing. I think aesthetics matter. I think beauty matters. And if the idea of being organized is to help us have a home that helps us relax, I would love for beauty to be a part of that, because I don't know, I think beauty is relaxing, I guess. It's like, why not, right? We don't have to, and I think, sometimes we can over organize stuff, right? And have dozens and dozens of bins. And then it's kind of like, whoa, like there's so much in here. So there is like an aesthetic balance, I think, that ideally goes with organizing. But talking about like simple systems are going to be the easiest to maintain. So when we're going in, we're organizing a whole house, and I get that all the time. I don't know if I want to spend this money on your service because I think it's just going to go back that way in a week or two, right?
Mhm.
And now, of course, part of staying organized does require a shift in habits, no question. Right.
Okay.
If we're going to set up a system that involves everybody taking their shoes off at the door, and no one has ever taken their shoes off at the door, but now we have a nice bench, a shoe bench. Maybe everybody in the family has their own cubby for their shoes and their name is on it. That's wonderful. And it's a simple system. Let's say it's very simple. But the fact is nobody's ever taken off their shoes at the door ever before. So how do we get that to happen? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like one of two things is going to happen. Either one, we're going to start using some sort of trigger mechanism, something where we stack these habits. I can't even really come up with an example, but where we're trying to change our habits so that when we walk in, we take our shoes off. Maybe
Mhm.
we put a new rug that says take your shoes off. Maybe there's a sign that says take your
Yeah.
shoes off, and it's there for 3 weeks until everybody learns to take their shoes off, right? Or maybe what happens is no one is ever going to take their shoes off at the door. It's never going to happen. The shoes get taken off um, somewhere else in the house, right? So maybe the system actually needs to be set up over here where the shoes get taken off naturally. There
Mhm.
really is like, there's some choices. It's like, do you develop the system where it's already happening, or do you try to come up with this brand new system, um, and then get everybody to follow this new system? It's possible, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, am I just trying to create something that's not going to exist?
Yeah.
Okay, and then of course it comes down to like, well, how do you get your kids on board? How do you I'm learning a new system. Hopefully it's very, very easy. And if it's not easy and simple, it's gonna fall apart like
Mhm.
99% of the time. So you have to ask yourself that too. Like if is this too complicated, then it's probably not gonna last. Um, but I don't know. I think that we learn by watching and we learn by example. And of course, I think parents are always told lead by example. And I
Mhm.
think that it really is helpful to think of that when it comes to teaching your kids how to organize. Like if you are, you're getting onto them about not putting their things away, but your things aren't put away either. That's hard, right? That's hard to emphasize. And so when I talk to parents and they're trying to figure out how to get their kids on board, I just say, okay, first you get your systems in order. You focus on your own place. You put the mail away when you come in. You hang your coat up, and maybe you're fine. You're doing all these things, or once you're doing all these things, then I think asking them to I'll just keep going with the shoes, right? It's like
Yeah.
you're going to have to remind them to take their shoes off at the door for a while
Mhm.
until it becomes a habit. Something that we talk about a lot, just we as in Moxie space, is we like to call it the 10-minute tidy.
Oh,
It's a 10-minute tidy. It's 10 minutes a day. Ideally, it's the same time every single day. So maybe it's in the evening, maybe it's right after dinner, maybe it's right before dinner, depending on how your day flows and your family's day flows. But ideally, it's kind of around the same time every day. And eventually, ideally, the whole family gets involved. And I think that that could be maybe the best way to set the example, but also have time to teach and time to do it as a family. And the
oh,
biggest thing is that you're only doing it for 10 minutes. So you're not trying to do 20 minutes today because you skipped yesterday, and tomorrow it's only 5. And it's like, no, you're trying to set a habit. It's
yeah.
10 minutes. You'd be amazed. I'm sure all the mothers out there know how much you can get done in 10 minutes, right? You can get a lot done in 10 minutes, especially when you have a timer. And that's the other piece of it all, is set a timer for 10 minutes.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
it's a 10-minute song in the house or whatever it is. Maybe it's a loud timer so everybody is hearing it. And you just focus on maybe just one area, maybe, and then maybe your kid who will never take their shoes off at the door. Their tidying task every evening or whenever it is shoes, right? Tidying the shoes by the front door, taking all the excess shoes that, the rain boots that we're not going to need again for 3 months, and putting them in the closet. That's part of the maintenance piece of it all.
Mhm.
But I think that the thing about getting organized is one thing. Maintaining it is a very important piece. And I think that we miss that a lot. We miss the maintenance, and we get frustrated that things don't stay organized, but nothing will stay the way that it was if you don't maintain it. It's just like working out, right? It's like I worked out 7 days this week. That's amazing. I don't have to work out again for 6 months. And it's like, that's not how that works,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the perfect analogy. And I thought of some fun ideas as you were describing the 10-minute tidy. That's such an
Yeah.
ingenious idea. And I thought, what if you had a playlist where it's the same three songs? Because I don't know, songs are about 3 minutes. So if you had about three of them,
Yes.
it's the same three songs every day, and it's like real hype music. Like my son,
Yeah.
by the way, who's 14, cleaned up his room on his own without me asking a few days ago, and he was blasting his music so loud. What is I didn't know what was happening in there. And I finally peeked in and he's like folding something. I'm like, oh, you're cleaning up.
See?
And
That's
I'm so
awesome.
proud of him. But I think like music, like the part of the cleaning part or organizing part or maintaining it is getting the energy, right? Getting yourself in the mood, because like we're all kind of feeling depleted if it's that
Yeah.
middle or end of the day, and to kind
Yeah.
of like bring the energy back up in the house. And the other
Mhm.
thing I thought of as you were saying that is how we brand it. So I just had a post on my mom's group the other day about how, a lot of moms get resistance from kids when we call them chores, because who wants to do a chore?
Right.
Like, that doesn't sound fun. That sounds kind of like torture. And so it's like, all we have to do is call it something else. And so my advice was to call it a
Mhm.
family contribution. And, we all
Ooh,
contribute to living in the household. So we
yes.
all are part of this family system. And then I had someone
Mhm.
make a comment and she called it something else, or family responsibilities or something like that. And that even
Mhm.
and so even if I love the 10-minute tidy, like that kind of sounds fun. It sounds catchy, and so it's
Yeah.
like, I loved your idea of everybody takes a space, or maybe they
Mhm.
take the space that they're responsible for. Like there's so many ways you could do it, but that would be
Yeah.
one way where you're kind of like getting the whole family on board. And
Yeah.
so also, as we were talking, the next thing I thought of is, how they say opposites attract? Well, I'm sure
Mhm.
you know this, but inevitably, they're in a married couple or a cohabitating couple. There's always a messy person and there's always a clean
Yeah.
person. Maybe not always, but probably a lot. So what is your feedback about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a similar thing well, I mean, we get that all the time. We have someone who calls and they say, well, I really want this, but my partner doesn't.
Yeah.
Or they say, my partner really needs to get organized. I'm really organized. Like, what should I do? How do I get them organized? I think first and foremost, you can only focus on your own stuff first.
Mm,
So if you've put in the effort and the work to organize your own space, then you have maybe a leg to stand on to talk about somebody else's organization.
yeah.
Um, Something interesting though to note is that there are different styles of organizing, and they reflect who we are and the way our own brain works, right? So for instance, like some people feel that they need to see all of their stuff or they'll forget they have it.
Hmm.
And then other people feel the exact opposite. Like, I know I need to see nothing, because I don't want to see it because it makes my brain feel overwhelmed if I can see all my stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so sometimes that means, well, using clear containers versus opaque, containers you can't see through with labels on the outside, or clear containers with labels, but you can see through the container. And what I'll say is, well, there's an interesting book out there called The Clutter Connection. And this organizer has broken up 4 different styles of organizing, and basically everybody falls into one quadrant,
Okay.
or you lay over 2 different quadrants. And so that could be helpful. It could be helpful if you are, or if you're with a partner who seems the opposite of you, and maybe doing a little bit of research and just digging around to find out maybe they have a different style. And so my style is not going to work for them, but what is their style, so that we can find a system that works for them.
Mm,
um, and I think, as with any relationship, there are compromises and there are things that you have to agree to, and you stick to it, and you got to pick your battles and decide what really matters the most. Sometimes bringing in outside help, like an organizer, can be a really great solution. I will say that we have heard so many times, where, it doesn't always land like this, I will say this, but more often than not, it's usually the wife hires us and the husband was not, He was not sold on the whole thing. Maybe he finally agreed to allowing it to happen, but it's after we do our work that the husband is amazed and blown away and they're ready to have us back. And so sometimes it's just they need to see it
Oh,
to believe in it. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think that's so funny because that's also like, they say some dads don't really bond with their baby until after the baby's
You're
born,
born.
right? Because they need to see it, and it's
Yes.
almost like the same thing. They are not connected. It's kind of a weird analogy, but they're not really
Yeah,
emotional.
that's a great analogy.
They're
Yeah,
not
right.
until they can really see the results. And so maybe for the women
Right.
out there who are trying desperately to sell their
Yeah.
men and on a service like yours, maybe you show
Hmm.
pictures of like before and afters of other people's services and like,
Yeah.
show them the benefits. Like maybe that's what they need to like to get on board. So
Yeah.
next question is, I don't know why this stands out to me so much, but when I'm on social media and I see pantries, I
Mhm.
just drool because it looks so beautiful, and actually what y'all
Yeah.
did to my pantry many years ago was phenomenal. And so what is it
Mm.
about the family pantry with the food storage that is just, like, so dramatic from, like, before to after?
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of times it's the products, right? Like you
Mm,
go from a before pantry and it's just shelving with food all over it.
yeah.
And then you go to a pantry, it's often, I feel like the most dramatic transformations, usually a lot of organizing products have been brought in.
Okay.
And so that's a very different look. You're talking about just like, I mean, this is like a merchandise, like shoppable grocery store now
Yeah.
versus just like, kind of chaos. Here's the thing about food that is really interesting and packaging. It's really the packaging of the food is, and this could go with books also. There's a lot of words and colors
Mhm.
and, design elements and advertising and all of that all over, usually all over our products, our food packaging. And you have to adopt the idea that words are also a form of clutter because your mind immediately starts reading it, and it's just information that you're intaking that you might not need to be intaking. Um, and so so what's nice about using products, and when I say products, I mean an organizing bin or a container, or even like a turntable, lazy Susan kind of thing.
Mhm.
When we use bins and containers, it conceals all of that excess wording, colors, and then also, of course, now all the bins and containers match. So you've got this very uniform look that's very clean, and it seems very simple, but in like the way that simple is beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, the thing about I wanted to say too, the turntables, like the Lazy Susans turntables, we like using those because it breaks up kind of the look. So kind of definitely a transformed, organized pantry has all the aesthetics, like all those, points for good aesthetics. That's what's
Yeah.
going on there. And sometimes there's a mix of different types of containers. There's a mix of turntables versus clear bins versus a textured canvas bin. And what
Mhm.
is nice about breaking that up is that it's kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier when you can like over organize and you have like,
Uh,
shelves and shelving of so many bins. They all look the same. There's labels on all of them. That's too much.
yeah.
If you're looking at like 20 containers, what could be nice is if you distinguish the different categories or zones by using different types of products. It can just be
Mhm.
helpful for your mind, um, because it's not too much of one thing.
Okay. That's great. That's
Um,
so nice
yeah.
because I never knew what it was about when I see those pictures of the pantries that I don't know why I love it. I love it. I'm like, why does my pantry look like that? But I
Beautiful.
just figured out my problem. I think I have too many of all the same bins now. I have like all the clear ones. And maybe
Oh,
what you're
well, and clear.
yes, maybe what you're saying is A, I can see too many of the labels and the
Yeah.
words, but
Yeah.
B, I need to mix up my textures, maybe add in like a wicker or canvas or whatever, some bins,
Yes.
so that my eye isn't just overwhelmed with all the
Yeah.
clear, but I have different kind of it breaks it up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's totally what I'm saying. And try a couple turntables in there too for condiments or things like that, right? Because that will also help break it up. And I'll say too, a note about clear containers.
Mhm.
Do you have labels on your bins or no?
I do,
Either is
but
fine.
and the funny thing is I don't always update them, so then it says like sweets, but really it's like my rice and stuff. So
Of course, that's happening to all of us. That's the other piece of like the maintenance, like we set up these
yes,
systems, but they have to be maintained.
yeah.
Side note, I highly recommend just like putting in a calendar invite maybe a couple times a year, or like when the school year changes, to
Oh,
go through your systems, like use that as a trigger for maintaining.
okay.
Um, okay, clear bins are tricky because you can still see through them. So it doesn't take away the clutter of words or colors or things like that. If you put
Yeah.
a label on it and the label is clear or the label's hard to read, then that's even more challenging. If you have a solid label on a clear bin, that's nice because you can see it more easily if that's an aesthetic you're okay with.
Mhm.
Um, and then I thought I was going to say another thing about that, but I think it's just more, you're right in that maybe mixing it up, getting a mix can be really nice and very helpful for the visual appeal. I
Yeah,
think you're
yeah.
spot on with that.
That was really helpful advice, and I wish we had time to, like, go through every, like, space, like, because I know closets with clothes are a big one, but we're running low on time. There is one more thing that I wanted to bring up, which I remember you and I had talked before, and you gave me, like, the coolest, concept, which was I remember you talked about real
Mm.
estate is in your house, and the
Oh
idea
yeah,
that every square inch of your house is valuable real estate,
right.
and so the question is, how are you using that space? So can you speak to do you remember saying talking to me about
Yeah,
that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
yeah, it's definitely a concept we like to speak about, and it's yeah, every inch of your space is real estate within the real estate that you have, and so there's value on all of it. And when you are out shopping in the world, really good habit to get into is asking yourself before you buy something, where is this going to live? Do I have real estate? Do I have space for this to come into my house? And if
Mm,
it's so lovely and it's so wonderful that you want to make space, then do that, but make space, which means you have to release another piece of real estate in your
mm,
house for that new item to come into.
mm.
It's also a concept of thinking about how you're placing things, and like really good real estate is the real estate that you see right away. It's the stuff that's right in front of you. It's at eye level or counter level. And so using the really prime real estate for things that you're not accessing very often is usually, you know, not helpful for you, right? So like put the things you're using most often, even if your pantry, right? If you want to eat healthier, put the healthier foods at eye level. Don't put
Oh,
your snacks at the prime real estate that you see right as you walk in the door. You don't put all the junk food there. So you
yeah.
think of it that way too.
I think that's such a great concept that we can pass along to our kids too, right? Like the most
Yes.
used foods is where we want to put because I try to teach my kids to organize their own belongings and maybe the stuff we never use or we're just saving or whatever,
Yeah.
we put that on a very high shelf that we can't access easily. It's just a really good concept for people to remember just like doing in their daily life or when they do their big clean outs. Okay,
Yeah.
so any last bits for the moms? Anything you want to share about your personal life? I think you're do you have a blended family or blending a family that you're kind of like adopting these personal habits with your
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's interesting because you've got someone who already has habits and you're trying to blend in your own, but also it's challenging. It's challenging to have a blended family because I have my own ways of doing things, which of course, is like organized.
Mhm.
But to have grace and with others as they learn and see what's happening naturally for them, I will just say that, thinking about what's happening naturally in your home, where are things landing naturally, and trying to develop systems around what's happening naturally before trying to, you know, just undo everything in the home. Start there, start small, always start small, and always use a timer when you're trying to do your own project. It can be very helpful.
Oh, that's so great. Okay, well, I have an idea for a whole nother show on blending families and merging families because I feel like there's a lot of
Great.
us in that boat. Yes, yes. So, with that
Yeah.
being said, how can people find your company moving forward?
Yeah. So our website is just moxiespace.com. Booking a free call with us to learn if you're interested to learn how, what it could look like to hire organizers. That's the best place to do it. We're also on Instagram. That's our main channel. We post before and afters. We post our team, and you can connect with us there too.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Sarah. This was so great.
Yeah.
I just love you're always so full of ideas and concepts and
Oh,
great practical takeaways for the mom. So thank you again.
good.
So
My pleasure, Laura.
Great. So, all right, be sure to listen to SpanglishRadio.ca, watch it, see it, live it, breathe it, download it. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.